The chamber hummed with quiet disdain. 12 species sat in judgment, each more ancient and self-important than the last. Their gazes bore down on the lone human standing at the center of the circular room. Commander Jarrah Knox didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He stood with his hands loosely clasped behind his back, as if this were some dull company boardroom and not the seat of galactic power. The Archon of the Threxian Combine, scaled, 12 foot tall, and breathing like a furnace, spoke first. Human. Your expansion into neutral zones violates Galactic Accord Alpha. You've ignored our advisories. This assembly is unified in its judgment. Knox's expression didn't move. No flicker of fear. No confusion. He waited. You are offered conditional integration into the Galactic Council, the Archon continued. As a vassal species under Threxian guidance. Decline, and we unleash full-scale retaliation. Total submission or annihilation. Murmurs followed. Some expected gratitude. Others expected begging. No one expected the response they received. Jarrah raised an eyebrow and tilted his head slightly. Is that it? Silence. Even the automated transcriptor paused, unsure if it missed something. I mean, he added casually, I assumed this was going to be difficult. Maybe some negotiation. Not a recycled threat from 1,000 other failed empires. The room recoiled, some offended, others genuinely confused. The Council had crushed civilizations for less. No species had ever stood before them like this. No one talked like this. The Vrax delegate hissed. Human, do you comprehend the scale of our reach? Our fleets darken stars. Our weapons fold time. Your species crawled from mud barely a cosmic moment ago. Jarrah smiled, an expression none of them could read, but all instinctively distrusted. You lot love talking about scale. Technology. Power. You think wars are won with numbers, lasers, and threats. That might work on species raised under your boot. Not us. The elderly High Seer, wispy and ancient, leaned forward. Then you refuse integration? I refuse delusion, Knox said. You think we're unprepared? We've been expecting this. You think this meeting was your idea? No. We needed to see your faces. Needed to confirm you'd actually try something this stupid. The Archon's glow pulsed dangerously. Do not mistake arrogance for strength, human. We have brought Star Kings to their knees. Knox took a slow breath. His voice dropped, almost conversational. We've brought ourselves to our knees more times than I can count, and every time, we stood back up. Bloodied. Smarter. Meaner. A flicker of static buzzed at his temple. Hidden link. A quiet voice from Earth Command. Signal stable. Transmission received. Confirmation protocols in place. He continued speaking, his tone unchanged. You call yourselves the pinnacle of civilization, yet you can't comprehend a species that fights not because it wants to, but because it's wired to finish what others start. A Zelvathi official slammed a tentacle on the desk. You are outnumbered. Outgunned. Surrounded. Outnumbered? Knox scoffed. Maybe. Outgunned? Not anymore. Surrounded? Only if you think three-dimensional. The chamber grew cold. Knox stepped forward, closing the gap between him and the Archon's pedestal. You came here expecting fear. What you're getting is a warning. Earth is not a rogue planet begging for mercy. We are the species you hoped never reached the stars. We're the wild card. The Threxian rose fully, dwarfing the human by 3 meters. Then you leave us no choice. This is an act of war. Knox met the creature's molten eyes without blinking. You threatened war. This isn't new. You're just the latest in a long line of bullies with better toys. Earth doesn't flinch anymore. He stepped back, tapped a small patch on his wrist, and the seal on his uniform adjusted with a hiss. Message received. Full declaration of hostility. I'll let Earth know. The elderly High Seer whispered. You're bluffing. You can't withstand our fleets. Knox looked straight at her. We don't need to. We just need to outlast your assumptions. Another beat passed. Then he turned to walk away. As the chamber's guards instinctively raised weapons, the Threxian slammed his fist down. Let him go. Let him tell his people what's coming. Nox paused at the threshold. He glanced over his shoulder and offered one last line. You all came together to scare us. Instead, you just united us. And then he was gone. Behind him, chaos bloomed. Council members began shouting in overlapping frequencies. Some demanded immediate strikes. Others hesitated. A few, mostly the younger species, looked pale, startled not by Nox's bravado, but by the truth behind his words. Earth had not come to kneel. It had come to listen. To watch. And now to prepare. On the edge of the council chamber's solar array, a hidden drone, launched weeks prior, beamed the entire conversation back to Earth Command in real time. In a steel-clad bunker below the Andes, Commander Reese, Admiral of Earth's Defense Command, watched the feed with arms folded. He didn't look surprised. Looks like Nox delivered, Reese muttered. All right. Activate Shadow Grid. Begin Phase 2. Technicians scrambled. Lights dimmed. An old world was waking up. Back in orbit, the Council's flagship opened a comlink to its fleets. Prepare for invasion, said the Threxian Archon. On Earth, the first quantum relays lit up. Nox's voice echoed through human space like a thunderclap. They're coming. No one panicked. No one hesitated. They'd been ready the whole time. The Council's decision spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Within hours, fleets mobilized. War banners that had gathered dust for centuries unfurled. Species that once squabbled over trade routes now stood united against a common enemy, Earth. The decision had been made in arrogance, but the execution was swift. Hundreds of armadas, synchronized through the Council's AI war nodes, began their convergence. To them, it was a routine extermination wrapped in ceremonial procedure. On Earth, there was no panic, only motion. Years of silent preparation snapped into action. Civilian broadcasts halted. All global satellites shifted to military control. The planetary shield lattice, long thought theoretical, began activating node by node. In underground bunkers, buried deeper than ancient tectonic scars, Earth's command structure took over. Admiral Reese received the full scope of the Council's plan. Their travel vectors, deployment formations, and intended invasion points were decrypted within minutes of intercept. Not because the Council was careless, but because they didn't think humans capable of breaking neural-sealed code. That was their first mistake. Underestimating a species that had cracked its own DNA, weaponized quantum computing, and turned chaos into opportunity. The Council's offensive focused on speed. They intended to overwhelm Earth before it could react. But Earth's defense was not built to stop them at the gate. It was designed to bleed them from the moment they jumped into the system. No warning shots. No speeches. Just attrition, precision, and pressure. As the first wave arrived, they encountered nothing. No orbital resistance. No transmissions. Just silence. Then, one by one, their ships began vanishing from the grid. Unseen by most, the Vanta protocol had activated. It was humanity's ace, known to only 3 people on the planet. A classified array of stealth satellites hidden inside the rings of Saturn, capable of projecting null space pockets. Any ship entering its range would experience a blackout, navigation scrambled, communications dead, weapons unresponsive. The Council's vanguard vanished without warning, no explosions, no debris, just wiped clean from the universe like smudges off a window. Confusion set in. The second wave held position, waiting for clarity. What they received was a spike of coordinated laser fire from Mars' outer platform. Then from Jupiter's orbital mines. Then from Earth's own moon. Every rock in the Sol system had teeth. Admiral Reese spoke only once during the first 2 hours. Don't chase them. Let them try to regroup. Then we break their rhythm. The Council's formations began to collapse. Ships not used to fighting outside tightly managed war codes found themselves isolated, their support systems severed. Human AI warfare drones, codenamed Seraphs, slipped between them, nearly invisible, weaponless by design but equipped to disable power cores and wipe navigational memory. One Seraph could disarm a cruiser without being seen. 2 could disable a flagship. 100? They weren't even sure how many were out there. The Council didn't adapt. They persisted. To them, every battle was a test of dominance, not endurance. They kept throwing numbers forward. Earth bled too, but not in ways the Council expected. It didn't scream or break. It analyzed, adjusted, learned. On the Council's flagship, the Threxian Archon bellowed for answers. Where are their fleets? Why won't they engage? No one had a clear answer. Their command systems kept predicting full human retaliation, a swarm of ships rising from Earth to meet them in a spectacular final stand. But that never came. Humanity didn't play by the rules. Instead, they used algorithms that adjusted in real time to each new Council tactic. Strike groups vanished before impact. Interceptors melted into dark space and reappeared behind command vessels. EMP pulses targeted life support systems instead of engines. They weren't just fighting back, they were rewriting the rules of combat mid-battle. Earth's forces didn't behave like any galactic military. They didn't defend territory. They didn't posture. They didn't hold lines. They hunted. Back on Earth, Knox was already deep inside the classified vault beneath the Pacific Trench. He reviewed engagement reports not as a soldier, but as a predator studying wounded prey. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. The numbers spoke for themselves. Of the first 3 Council waves, 41% had been neutralized within the first 5 hours. No full-scale engagement. Minimal human losses. But that wasn't the goal. This wasn't about winning the first fight. It was about draining momentum. Letting the Council commit so hard, so fast, they couldn't pivot. Admiral Reese initiated Phase 3, Disinformation. A burst transmission left Earth's secure line, encoded to be easily intercepted. The content suggested Earth was abandoning its orbital defenses and pulling forces back for a last stand near Antarctica. Within an hour, 3 major Council fleets rerouted. As they approached Earth's southern hemisphere, their sensors detected what appeared to be massive energy readings, power signatures of a planetary shield overloading. They rushed in. But the energy wasn't a shield. It was a massive atmospheric destabilizer. A fake. A decoy planted to overload sensor networks. As soon as they entered the lower atmosphere, dozens of dormant rail platforms buried under the ice ripped open and fired in perfect sync. 12 capital ships incinerated in under 90 seconds. The Council's war leaders had never fought a species this fluid, this deceptive, this unshakable. They finally began to understand. Humanity didn't care about pride or tradition. It cared about results. Efficiency. Survival. No declarations of glory. No desperate pleas for ceasefire. Just Knox's voice, broadcast across all frequencies. We warned you. We didn't ask for peace because we feared you. We asked because you were never worth our full attention. Then silence again. No gloating. No demands. Only cold, clinical escalation. And the Council began to realize they weren't at war with another empire. They were at war with something far worse. A species that had already survived its own self-destruction and came back smarter. A civilization that had mastered every kind of war, from trenches to orbit, from code to chaos. And they were just getting started. Council Command convened an emergency session, each delegate with panic poorly masked behind formality. For the first time in centuries, the collective forces of the galaxy had failed to dominate. Entire fleets had gone dark. Strategic projections were useless. And Earth, primitive, chaotic Earth, was dismantling their war machine without deploying its own. Councillor Ikriel of the Vorton Republic, a known hawk, slammed his clawed appendage on the table. This is not a war. This is a humiliation. No one disagreed. The loss-to-engagement ratio was unacceptable. Advanced ships vanished without firing a shot. Commanders couldn't explain how their encrypted systems were bypassed. Dozens of AIs had shut down mid-process. Some fleets even reported phantom engagements, fighting enemies that weren't there, reacting to threats that didn't exist. Misinformation wasn't a tactic, it was Earth's primary weapon. The Council had never encountered a force that relied so heavily on psychological and technological subversion. Their doctrine was built on strength, numbers, firepower, intimidation. Earth offered none of those, yet the results were catastrophic. What terrified them more than casualties was control, or the lack of it. They didn't know what Earth would do next, because Earth didn't follow patterns. It moved like smoke, ungraspable, unreadable. In desperation, the Council authorized Directive 117, full force saturation. Every fleet within 2 jumps of Sol was ordered to converge. No more tactical waves. No more ceremonial deployments. Just brute strength. Raw numbers. 427 warships jumped simultaneously, bypassing conventional staging. As they surged toward Earth, something unusual happened. The system remained quiet. No new activity. No signs of panic. Earth didn't react. Because it didn't need to. The saturation fleets arrived to find what appeared to be a dormant Earth. No orbital traffic. Planetary calm silent. Surface installations powered down. Even the defense platforms had gone offline. For a brief moment, hope returned to the Council ranks. Perhaps Earth had overextended. Perhaps its systems had finally buckled under pressure. Then the gravitational field shifted. Not from Earth, but from beyond it. From behind the sun. A construct emerged. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a station. It was something else entirely. A weaponized orbital anomaly, cloaked in the solar blind spot. 8 miles wide. Hexagonal plates rotating in sequence. A silent, deliberate mass that had not been designed for deterrence. It had been designed to be the final word. Its name was Tether. As the Council's saturation fleet attempted to reposition, Tether activated its compression field. Not an explosion, not a beam, just a focused collapse of space around specific ships. Dozens folded inward, crushed in localized gravity pockets, reduced to fragments before alarms could even sound. It didn't target bridges or engines, it collapsed timelines. A weapon that bent physics rather than destroyed matter. The survivors tried to scatter, but Earth's electromagnetic silence ended. Across every band, a single encrypted command echoed. Initiate fold glass. From beneath Earth's crust, relay towers shot upward through camouflage layers. Fold glass, Earth's mobile reflectors, began catching solar radiation and refracting it through space-time filters. Harmless light became directed chaos. Energy bursts curved, splitting into sub-beams that bypassed shielding protocols entirely. Council vessels started venting atmosphere before their captains even realized they'd been hit. No traditional fleet could survive this. But the Council wasn't retreating. They doubled down. In response, Earth launched its only manned wave. 14 ships. All black-hulled, signal-dead, AI-augmented but crude. Not battleships. Not dreadnoughts. Hunters. Designed not to dominate space, but to infiltrate enemy formations, disrupt networks, and exit before destruction. One of those ships carried Knox. He wasn't there to inspire. He was there to deliver a message personally. The Hunter-class ship, Dead Reckoning, slipped through the saturation fleet unnoticed. Cloaked in a mirror shield system, it bypassed scans by replicating enemy engine patterns. It didn't need to fire a shot. It simply broadcast. A 5-second clip. Footage of Council warships, burning, breaking, vanishing, looped against a voice. Not Knox's. Earth's synthetic translator, emotionless and surgical. This is not retaliation. This is the cost of your arrogance. The video ended. No threat. No ultimatum. Just the blunt aftermath of an offensive Earth hadn't even escalated yet. Inside the Council fleet, morale splintered. Command ships turned inward. Officers questioned orders. Internal mutinies began without warning. A dozen ships opened fire on their own formation after detecting phantom human signatures aboard. No humans had boarded them. Earth had simply hacked their target ID systems using audio fusion malware embedded in the previous broadcast. The Council's doctrine had no protocol for chaos at this scale. Back at the Galactic core, a secondary Council assembly tried to frame a diplomatic resolution. Open a channel. Send a delegation. Offer reparations. But Earth wasn't answering calls anymore. Because Earth understood one truth better than any species in the galaxy. If you respond to violence with compromise, you invite more violence. So, Earth responded with clarity. With finality. The next strike was surgical. No ships. No troops. No spectacle. Just a blackout. 12 Council worlds lost all orbital satellites simultaneously. Not destroyed, just shut down. Their backups failed next. Then ground-based networks. Total silence. Within minutes, transportation systems stalled, weather stabilizers collapsed, and digital economies froze. No blood spilled. Just infrastructure, removed like chess pieces from a board. And once again, no claim of responsibility. No transmission from Earth. Just a void where control used to be. Councillor Creel, once defiant, now whispered the words no one wanted to speak. We thought they were defending themselves. But they're not. They're demonstrating. Because humanity had reached a conclusion. The war was already won. Now they were deciding how long the Council deserved to exist. The Galactic Council scrambled to regain its footing, but Earth wasn't waiting for permission to continue. It no longer viewed the Council as an equal opponent. It viewed them as a problem to solve. Tether remained in position, inert yet undeniable, a message in orbit that needed no translation. Every attempt to scan it returned corrupted data. Every drone sent near it vanished. Not destroyed, removed. Quietly. Efficiently. Without response. Tether didn't fire again. It didn't need to. Earth's silence had become its most potent weapon. In the void left by the shattered fleets, the Council attempted to consolidate what power remained. Emergency encryption protocols were deployed. Systems were purged. Fleets were rerouted to fallback systems. But nothing could reverse the humiliation. Their elite armada had been shredded without traditional combat. Earth had rewritten the rules of warfare in front of the entire galaxy. And then came the leak. Classified transmissions, Council war planning, interspecies coercion reports, diplomatic extortion logs, all of it released across open civilian networks in hundreds of systems. Not just war crimes. Not just lies. But proof that the Council had provoked Earth under false pretenses, using staged intelligence to justify planetary containment. The public reaction was immediate and explosive. Protests on allied worlds. Military personnel going AWOL. Civilian riots in systems that had never seen unrest. One by one, smaller member species began issuing withdrawal notices from Council affiliation. Not because they supported Earth, but because they no longer trusted the ones claiming to protect them. Earth didn't comment. It didn't claim responsibility for the leak. It didn't offer justification. It simply let the truth rot the Council from within. Then came the Ex-Liberation Accord. 12 formerly annexed species, once under forced Council protection, released a joint statement declaring neutrality and independence. The wording was careful, but the implication wasn't. They had been watching Earth. And while they feared its power, they respected its restraint. That restraint had its limits. In Sector 9V, a remaining Council fleet attempted to blockade a neutral shipping lane used for interstellar humanitarian supplies. No warning was given. They simply began seizing cargo, interrogating crew, asserting Council jurisdiction. 37 minutes later, every Council vessel involved blinked off long-range scanners. They weren't destroyed. They were gone. The only record of what happened was recovered from a civilian transport. A single frame of footage, the shadow of something vast moving through hyperspace outside visual range. No shape. No color. Just curvature. As if space had bent then reset. The crew of the transport reported no contact. No threat. No message. Just silence, and then empty stars. At this point, Earth had still not delivered an ultimatum. There were no demands. No conditions. Only escalation without declaration. The Council kept guessing. Kept reacting. But Earth wasn't responding anymore. It was initiating. Knox had returned, but not to deliver speeches. He was debriefing autonomous field agents, humans trained not for combat, but for deconstruction. Infrastructure, belief systems, social trust, these were the real targets. Earth had built an entire branch of warfare designed not to conquer territory, but to dissolve the very idea of obedience. Where the Council relied on systems, Earth sowed doubt. A whisper campaign began. Council stations began reporting ghost signals, feedback loops embedded in their command interfaces. Officers hallucinated voice commands that never came. Lights flickered without power fluctuations. Simple machines malfunctioned under perfect conditions. No physical damage. Just pressure. Constant, tailored pressure. Entire brigades resigned. In the halls of the Galactic Council, the final defenders of old power gathered to salvage what remained. They begged for a solution. What did Earth want? Why hadn't they taken the core? Why hadn't they colonized their enemies? Knox's recorded reply played in a cracked, intercepted transmission. We don't want your systems. We want you to understand what it feels like to lose control, and keep living. By then, Earth's presence had spread. Not through conquest, but through invitation. Systems previously loyal to the Council were now requesting contact with Earth's liaison network. Not to surrender. To learn. To adapt. They didn't want to join Earth. They wanted to survive Earth. In desperation, the Council deployed a psychological countermeasure, the Omega Resolution. A planned sacrifice. They would fabricate a civilian tragedy, an Earth-caused massacre, a manipulated horror story. Use it to sway public opinion against Earth's growing influence. The plan was intercepted before it launched. Earth's response was not military. It was algorithmic. The Council's internal archives were overwritten. Their own system broadcasted the Omega Resolution plan publicly, word for word. Every forged detail, every planted witness, every execution order. There was no recovery from that. The illusion of legitimacy collapsed. In just over 4 standard weeks, the most powerful body in the galaxy had become a liability to its own members. Not because it was defeated, but because it had been exposed. The final fracture came from within. Councillor Marin of the Alari delegation submitted a motion to dissolve the Council and initiate a full-truth tribunal under neutral observation. For the first time in recorded history, a member species voted against its own position on live record. 6 more followed. A quorum broke. The Council was no longer legally binding. And still, Earth said nothing. It didn't gloat. Didn't celebrate. No monuments were erected. No victory tours. Earth's only acknowledgement was a quiet resumption of standard transmissions. As if the war had never occurred. What no one realized was this. Earth didn't win by overpowering the Council. It won by making the galaxy realize the Council was never in control to begin with. The galaxy held its breath, not out of fear, but confusion. Earth had upended centuries of structure and discipline, then left the ruins untouched. The Galactic Council no longer functioned. Its systems were inert, its protocols frozen, its communications ignored. Worlds once aligned under its banner now operated independently, quietly rebuilding or re-evaluating. No coordinated retaliation came. No alliances reformed. Just static, echoing through a shattered hierarchy. The tether remained in orbit above the Council's former capital. Still unmoving. Still untouchable. Its presence alone sustained the silence. No species dared approach it. No vessel crossed its trajectory. It had become more than a weapon, it was a reminder. An artifact of restraint and certainty. Earth didn't speak, because it didn't need to anymore. Ambassadors from dozens of former Council Alliance systems tried to reach Earth through back channels. They offered reparations, neutrality pacts, and cultural exchange treaties. Earth declined or ignored them all. It wasn't interested in diplomacy. It was interested in precedent. Every power structure that threatened it had now learned the same truth: Earth would not ask for peace. It would enforce it. Amid the disorder, one event shifted the galaxy again. A research probe, sent from the fringe of an ex-council system, picked up a faint signal embedded deep in subspace. It wasn't a language. It was a recursive data signature. Binary folded into fractal patterns. Mathematical fingerprints. It was Earth's design. But not one anyone recognized. The signal repeated across multiple quadrants, timed at irregular intervals. A predictive AI constructed a model and discovered a disturbing pattern. The signal was expanding. Self-replicating. Quietly. It wasn't a weapon. It was infrastructure. Earth had seeded the galaxy. Not with ships. Not with colonies. With logic. These data blossoms, as they were later called, weren't just transmitting, they were adapting. Every time a species tried to block or reroute them, the blossoms changed. Their structure evolved, avoiding detection and interference. They didn't carry Earth's message. They carried Earth's thinking. Entire networks began to shift. Trade systems optimized on their own. Navigation relays began self-correcting. Languages translated faster. Political misinformation was harder to sustain. Not because Earth was enforcing control, but because it had introduced efficiency so powerful, no species could afford to ignore it. Without firing a single additional shot, Earth had become essential. Even those who resented Earth's methods began using the blossoms. The alternative was stagnation. A dozen frontier civilizations tripled their agricultural yields. Medical databases synchronized with autonomous correction. Crime analytics predicted threats before they occurred. All of it emerged from simple access to Earth's silent code. But it wasn't a gift. Embedded in every blossom was a failsafe, a kill switch, dormant unless tampered with. The galaxy learned this when a private research group attempted to reverse engineer a blossom's structure. Their planetary network collapsed within minutes. Communications dead. Transit shut down. Files corrupted. Not erased, isolated. The planet survived, but its society reverted to analog systems for nearly 2 standard cycles. Message received. Earth's influence became inescapable. Not through imposition, but integration. Systems adapted to the logic Earth introduced because resisting it cost too much. Galaxies weren't being conquered, they were being rewritten. Quietly, passively, absolutely. Then Nox reappeared. One address. Unscheduled. Unscripted. Broadcast from a civilian station on an outer colony. No flags. No emblems. Just Nox seated unarmed casual. He said, "You wanted to know what we wanted. It was never control. We just wanted to be left alone. You made that impossible. So now, we've made something else impossible, a galaxy where fear runs unchecked." He paused, then continued, "Earth doesn't need to lead. We don't need your approval. We don't need a seat at any council. We've shown you what happens when you assume we're weak. From this point forward, understand this: humanity is the cost of aggression." That was all. The feed cut. Not dramatically. Just a clean exit. No threat. No boast. Just finality. And from that point, the galaxy shifted. Governments began restructuring not around Earth, but around the absence of Earth's retaliation. No longer did aggression go unchallenged. Not because Earth intervened, but because the risk was no longer theoretical. Pirates, slavers, extortionists, all began disappearing. Not with explosions. With silence. Black market hubs turned themselves in. War profiteers abandoned fleets mid-expansion. Not out of morality. Out of fear. The new universal constant was no longer council law or species dominance. It was the possibility that Earth was watching, and might intervene, once. And once was enough. In time, Earth became less a planet and more a concept. A boundary. Not an empire, but a consequence. Systems began to say it aloud, in different languages, with different phrasing, but the meaning was always the same. If Earth wouldn't act like this, maybe we shouldn't either. Without expansion. Without treaties. Without a single occupied world beyond Sol, humanity had ended the era of unchecked galactic rule. The Council was gone. Its memory reduced to a lesson in arrogance. The galaxy didn't unite under Earth. It simply reorganized itself around not provoking Earth again. And Earth? Earth went quiet. It didn't demand tribute. It didn't monitor. It didn't repeat the warning. It had said everything it needed to say. Once.